Cowboy saved a towering Apache woman from drowning. Her father returned with a shocking gift. The sun had barely begun its climb over the red-orange cliffs of Arizona when Elias, a lone cowboy, rode his worn horse along the dusty path near the Gila River. The air was crisp with morning chill, and the river flowed slowly at first, its surface sparkling in the early light. Elias loved mornings like this. They were quiet, peaceful, and gave him time to think without the noise of the town or the hustle of other cowboys. He had been traveling the plains for many years, moving cattle, helping settlers, and sometimes taking odd jobs, but the open land was always where he felt at home. As he rode closer to a bend in the river, he noticed a strange movement near the water's edge. At first, he thought it might be an animal. Coyotes sometimes came down to drink this early, or maybe a deer. But as he got closer, he realized it was not an animal at all. It was a person. A tall woman, far taller than anyone he had seen in his life, struggling against the fast current of the river. Her arms flailed and her long dark hair clung to her face. She was trying to keep her head above water, but the river had grown stronger than it seemed from the bank. Some days before, the rains upstream had swelled the river, and now it rushed more powerfully than usual. Elias felt a chill run down his spine. He knew if he didn't act fast, she could be swept away completely. Without thinking twice, he nudged his horse closer to the water. "Hold on!" he shouted, his voice cutting across the sound of rushing water. The woman looked up, her eyes wide with fear, and for a moment their gazes met. Elias could see the panic in her expression, but also a hint of determination. She was not someone who would give up easily. Elias dismounted, letting the reins fall over his horse's neck. The river was cold, much colder than it looked. He felt the icy water hit his boots as he stepped in, but he kept moving forward. Each step was more difficult than the last. The riverbed was uneven, slippery, and full of hidden stones that could trip a man easily. He reached out with one hand, trying to grab hers. The current pushed against him like a wall, trying to turn him around, but he pressed forward. "Don't panic," he called again, struggling to keep his voice steady. "I've got you." The woman tried to swim toward him, but the river tossed her around. She was strong, clearly strong. Elias could see it in the way her shoulders moved through the water, but the river was stronger. He finally managed to grab her arm, holding on with all his strength. She grabbed his other arm tightly, and together they fought the current. Each step felt like a battle. At one point, Elias stumbled and nearly fell, but he managed to keep his balance and pull her a little closer to the bank. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the shallower part of the river. Elias collapsed on one knee, gasping for air, while the woman finally stepped onto solid ground. She shook herself, water dripping from her hair and clothes, and looked up at him. For a moment, they just stared at each other, both breathing heavily. Then she smiled faintly, a small, shy smile that seemed almost impossible after such an ordeal. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice calm but carrying the weight of everything she had just gone through. Elias nodded, too tired to speak at first, and then managed a quiet, "No problem." He noticed then that she was unlike anyone he had ever met. Her clothes were simple but well-made, clearly from a culture very different from the settlers and cowboys he knew. She had a tall, commanding presence, and though the river had knocked her down, there was a strength in her posture, in the way she held herself, that made it clear she was not someone to underestimate. Elias felt a mix of admiration and curiosity. The woman introduced herself as Naeli, and though she did not speak much at first, Elias could tell she was grateful. He offered her some water from his canteen and waited while she drank, noticing the careful way she treated even the simplest gesture. It was clear she had grown up with respect and dignity. and Elias could not help but feel honored that he had been able to help her. As they walked along the riverbank together, helping each other over slippery stones and shallow pools, Elias learned a little about her. She came from a nearby Apache village, and she had been collecting herbs along the river when the sudden current had caught her off guard. Her village was close, she said, but the river had grown unexpectedly fast that morning. Elias listened carefully, not asking too many questions, but fascinated by her calm strength and quiet courage. By the time they reached the edge of the woods that led toward her village, the sun was higher in the sky. Birds chirped and the wind rustled through the dry grass. Elias felt a sense of satisfaction mixed with exhaustion. He had never faced anything quite like this before. Saving a life was always serious, but saving someone as remarkable as Nayeli had left an impression he could not shake. Before she left, Nayeli did something that surprised him. She reached into a small pouch at her waist and pulled out a hand-carved charm, made from wood and decorated with symbols he did not recognize. She handed it to him silently, and for a moment, Elias did not know what to say. The gesture was simple, but meaningful. It was her way of saying thank you in a way that words could not express. Elias accepted it, tucking it safely into his pocket, feeling the weight of its importance even without knowing its full meaning. As Nayeli disappeared along the path toward her village, Elias watched her go, a mixture of pride and curiosity swelling inside him. He had no idea then that this small act, saving a life, receiving a charm, would lead to something much larger, something that would change his understanding of bravery, friendship, and respect. He mounted his horse and continued along the path, the river sparkling behind him, knowing that life on the plains was never simple, and that moments like this were rare treasures to hold on to. That day the river had taught Elias a lesson he would never forget. Courage was not just in the hands of men who rode horses or carried guns. It was in the willingness to act when it mattered most, even against forces as powerful and unpredictable as nature itself. And in that moment, standing on the riverbank, he realized that the world was bigger and more surprising than he had ever imagined, and that people like Nayeli reminded him of that truth in the most unforgettable way. After the morning of the rescue, Elias could not stop thinking about Nayeli. The image of her tall, strong figure struggling against the river stayed in his mind, and even the memory of the charm she had given him seemed almost magical. He had seen many things in his life, storms, wild animals, and dangerous adventures, but nothing had left such a lasting impression as that morning. It was not just the danger, it was her courage, her calm in the face of fear, and the strange dignity she carried, even while dripping wet and exhausted. Elias returned to his small homestead later that day. The house was simple, built of rough timber, but it was warm and safe. He hung his wet clothes to dry and sat on the porch, turning the charm over in his hands. It was carved with care, and the symbols etched into it seemed to tell a story he could not understand. He wondered if it was a sign of gratitude, or if it held some deeper meaning in her culture. He had learned a little about the Apache people over the years, but not enough to understand their traditions fully. Word of the rescue spread through the nearby town faster than Elias expected. By the afternoon, neighbors came by, curious to hear the story. They had seen him ride toward the river, and now they wanted the details. Elias told the story simply, trying not to exaggerate, but even he could not hide the pride in his voice. People shook their heads in amazement, commenting on how unusual it was for a cowboy to save someone as tall and strong as Nayeli. Some even joked about how he might have needed more than courage, perhaps a little luck, too. Elias smiled politely, but he knew luck had little to do with it. He had acted because he had no choice. Even as he answered questions, he noticed something different in the way others looked at him. Respect, curiosity, and even a hint of envy could be seen in their eyes. Elias had always been known as a capable man, but this rescue gave him a new reputation. He was no longer just a cowboy who rode the plains. He was someone who had faced danger head-on to help another human being. The thought made him uneasy. He did not want attention, and he certainly did not want anyone to misjudge Nayeli or her people. She was proud and independent, and he had no right to take credit for her courage. That evening, Elias could not sleep. The sky was painted with deep reds and purples, and the stars began to sparkle in the clear desert sky. He walked outside and stared at the river, listening to the soft rush of water as it moved downstream. The memory of her eyes, wide with fear yet shining with determination, returned vividly. He wondered how she had made it home safely, if her family had been worried, and what they would think of him. Elias knew that in many cultures, strangers helping each other could be seen in very different ways. He hoped that Nayeli's family would understand his intentions were pure. The next morning, Elias decided to take a ride toward the edge of her village. He did not know if anyone would be receptive to his visit, but he felt a pull in his chest, a curiosity he could not ignore. He rode slowly, keeping to the edges of the paths and trying not to appear threatening. The village was small, surrounded by scrubland and the remains of old wooden fences. Smoke rose from a few small fires, and children ran along the paths, laughing as they played. The sounds of daily life were comforting, yet Elias could sense a quiet tension in the air. Outsiders were not always welcomed immediately, and he had to be careful. As he approached the central area of the village, Nayeli appeared. She had changed into dry clothes, and her presence was just as striking as he remembered. She stopped a few feet away, eyes cautious but curious. Elias dismounted and held out a hand, not in a greeting, but as a sign of peace. Nayeli studied him silently for a long moment, then nodded slightly. It was enough for Elias to understand that she was willing to let him speak. "I came to make sure you were safe," he said simply. "The river, it was strong this morning." Nayeli tilted her head, considering his words. She spoke softly, her voice carrying a melodic rhythm he found soothing. "I am well," she said. "Your help was unexpected. I did not think a stranger would risk himself for me." Elias nodded, unsure how to respond. Words felt clumsy compared to the gratitude and respect he felt. He simply said, "I couldn't let you drown." "I had to try." For a few moments there was silence. Children ran past, women went about their chores, and men tended to horses and small fires. Elias could see the rhythm of the village life, quiet yet purposeful. He realized that Nayeli's strength was not only in her height or courage, but in the life she led, filled with responsibility, skill, and respect for her people. It was a world different from his, yet he felt a connection he could not explain. Over the next few hours, Elias learned a little more about her family. Nayeli's father, Chief Take, was a respected leader, known for his wisdom and fairness. Our family was deeply rooted in tradition, yet open-minded enough to teach outsiders like him about their ways. Elias listened carefully, trying to absorb as much as he could. He was careful not to overstep, knowing that trust had to be earned, not demanded. By the time the sun reached its highest point, Elias realized that he had spent hours talking and walking with Nayeli and observing her village. He had expected a simple thank you and then a quiet departure, but instead he found himself part of something larger, a glimpse into a life and culture he had only read about in books. The experience filled him with admiration, curiosity, and a sense of responsibility. As Elias prepared to leave, Nayeli handed him another small token, a piece of fabric embroidered with symbols he did not understand. "For protection," she said, "and for remembering." He accepted it carefully, sensing the weight of her trust. It was more than a gift. It was a bridge between their worlds, a reminder that courage and respect could connect people even when their lives were very different. Riding back home, Elias could not stop thinking about what had happened. The rescue of Nayeli had been one moment a split decision in a dangerous river, but the consequences were unfolding in ways he had not imagined. He had met someone extraordinary, learned about a culture that was new to him, and begun to understand that bravery was not always about guns or fights. It was about protecting, helping, and respecting others, even when the world was unpredictable. Over the next few days, Elias continued his work on the plains, but his thoughts often returned to Nayeli and her family. He noticed little things, the way the river shifted, the paths that led to the village, and even the small symbols etched into the charm she had given him. Each reminder made him feel more connected to that morning and to the lessons he was learning. Then one day, as he was tending cattle near the river, a distant sound caught his attention. He looked up to see riders approaching fast from the direction of Nayeli's village. At first he felt a flicker of worry, unsure if something was wrong. But as they got closer, he could see that one rider, larger and older than the others, was leading the group with purpose. There was a confidence in his stride, and Elias felt a strange mix of anticipation and unease. He did not know it then, but this visit would change the next chapter of his life. Chief Take, Nayeli's father, was coming to see him, not as an enemy, but as someone who had earned attention through courage, kindness, and respect. Elias felt his heart beat faster. He knew that this encounter would not be simple. It would challenge him, surprise him, and teach him lessons he had never imagined. And so, as the riders approached through the tall grass and dust, Elias dismounted, ready to face whatever this unexpected turn of events would bring. He could only hope that the trust he had shown that morning, and the respect he had for Nayeli and her family, would be enough to navigate the coming moments. He did not yet know the gift or the shock that awaited him, but he felt ready in a way he had never felt before. The story of that river, that rescue, and that remarkable woman was only beginning, and Elias was about to learn that true courage sometimes comes in unexpected forms, and so do true friendships. The morning air was warm and dry as Elias stood outside his homestead, watching the riders approach. Dust swirled around their hooves, and the sunlight glinted off the leather saddles. Elias's horse shifted nervously beneath him, sensing the unusual tension. The leader of the group was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried himself with a quiet authority. Elias instinctively knew that this was not an ordinary visit. As the riders drew closer, Elias's heart beat faster. He had spent the last few days thinking about Nayeli, the river, and the charm she had given him. Now he realized he was about to meet her father, the chief of her people. He did not know what to expect. He had seen how some people reacted to strangers: suspicion, fear, even anger. Yet there was something different about this group. There was a calm confidence in the chief's eyes, a sense of purpose that was impossible to ignore. The chief dismounted gracefully, and Elias followed suit, stepping forward carefully. "I am Elias," he said, keeping his voice calm. "You must be Chief Take." The chief studied him silently for a moment, his dark eyes sharp yet thoughtful. He was taller than Elias had expected, his presence commanding respect without a word. Finally he nodded. "I am Take," he said, his voice low but strong. "I have heard of your actions at the river." Elias felt a mix of pride and nervousness. "I only did what I had to do," he said. "I could not let her drown." Taki's expression softened slightly, though his eyes remained watchful. "Your courage is noted," he said. "It is not easy to risk oneself for another, especially a stranger. Many men would have turned away. Elias nodded, unsure how much he should say. He did not want to offend, but he also did not want to hide the truth. The chief motioned for Elias to walk with him, and they moved toward the edge of the property where the grass met the sandy plains. The other riders stayed back, forming a loose circle around them, respectful but alert. Elias could sense that this was not just a casual visit. It was a meeting of two very different worlds, a moment that could shape the future of their relationship. Take spoke again, his voice calm but measured. I have seen your kindness. I have seen your respect for life. These are qualities that are rare, and they are the qualities I value. My daughter speaks highly of your actions, and I wish to understand the man who risked himself for her. Elias felt a strange sense of relief. He had feared anger, criticism, or even hostility, but Take's words were careful and fair. I do not expect thanks, Elias said honestly. I acted on instinct. I could not let her die. That is all. Take nodded, then gestured toward the nearby plains. We live by actions more than words, he said, and actions speak louder than any story told afterward. You have acted well, Elias, but actions have consequences, and sometimes they bring rewards not in gold, but in trust and understanding. Elias listened, intrigued and cautious. He had seen rewards in his life before, land, money, respect, but this sounded different. Take continued, walking slowly, his eyes scanning the horizon as if reading the land itself. Our people value bravery, yes, he said, but bravery without respect for others is empty. You have shown both courage and respect. This is why I have come. For a moment, Elias could not speak. The chief's words carried weight he had never felt before. They were not empty compliments or flattery. They were measured, honest, and full of meaning. Elias realized that he was standing before someone who had lived a life full of responsibility, someone who understood the true value of actions. Then Take stopped and turned to face him fully. I have a gift for you, he said simply. Elias's eyebrows rose slightly. He had not expected a gift. In his world, gifts were usually gold, silver, or tools. But Take's tone suggested something far different, something more personal and meaningful. The chief motioned for Elias to follow him a short distance to the edge of the plains where the grass thinned and the earth was firm. There, a group of men had arranged a small clearing. At first, Elias did not notice what was there, but as he stepped closer, his eyes widened. A horse stood in the center of the clearing, larger and stronger than any he had ever seen. Its coat was deep brown, almost glowing in the sunlight, and its mane fell in thick waves along its neck. The horse's eyes were calm yet intelligent, and it carried a presence that matched the chief's own authority. Tak spoke again, his voice steady. This horse is called Kawa, he said. It is the fastest and most loyal of our tribe. It has been trained with care and patience. It is given only to those who have shown courage, respect, and understanding. I give it to you because you have earned it. Elias felt a mixture of awe and disbelief. A horse like this was more than an animal. It was a companion, a protector, and a symbol of trust. He knelt slightly, running his hand along the horse's strong neck, feeling the power beneath its muscles. The horse nudged him gently, as if acknowledging him, and Elias could feel a connection forming instantly. Take then handed him a hand-stitched saddle, decorated with intricate patterns and symbols. This saddle is made with care, the chief said. It is more than comfort, it is tradition, respect, and honor, all in one. Elias accepted it carefully, understanding the significance of every stitch. Finally, Take handed him a small medallion, inscribed with symbols that represented courage, protection, and loyalty. This medallion will remind you of this day and of the bond between your world and mine, the chief explained. Keep it close, for it is not just a gift, but a promise. Elias felt his chest tighten. He had received gifts before, but nothing like this. It was not wealth or power. It was trust, respect, and connection. It was a reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in life were not tangible, but lived experiences and the bonds formed through courage and kindness. As he mounted Tawa for the first time, Elias felt a thrill he had never experienced. The horse moved with grace, responding to his slightest command. It was clear that this animal was extraordinary, but it was also clear that it was loyal because of trust, not force. Elias looked at Take, who nodded once approvingly. In that moment, Elias realized that this encounter had changed him. He was no longer just a cowboy traveling the plains. He was someone who had been recognized by a culture that valued what he had always believed in, but never fully understood. The chief spoke again before leaving. "Remember, Elias," he said, "trust and respect are earned. You have earned them today, but life will always test you. How you respond will define you more than any action taken in the past." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of the words. He knew the chief was right. Life would test him, and the lessons he had learned today would guide him in ways he could not yet imagine. As Take and his riders departed, Elias stayed for a few moments, looking at Tawa and the medallion, the river, the rescue. Nayeli and her father's gift all seemed connected, like pieces of a story that was still unfolding. He understood that courage and respect could cross worlds, and that sometimes the smallest actions, a hand extended in the river, a charm given, a life saved, could create ripples that changed everything. Elias finally rode back toward his homestead, Tawa moving smoothly beneath him. The plains stretched endlessly, golden and quiet, yet filled with possibility. He felt different, stronger, wiser, and more aware of the connections that life offered. What had started as a simple ride along the river had turned into a journey of courage, trust, and understanding. And Elias knew that the story was far from over. By the time he reached his small homestead, Elias felt a sense of calm and purpose he had never experienced before. He had faced danger, shown courage, and earned the respect of a remarkable family. Yet he also knew that this was only the beginning. The bond he had formed with Nayeli and her father, the trust given to him through gifts, and the lessons learned from their culture would guide him in the days to come. That night, as the stars appeared over the desert, Elias placed the medallion on his mantelpiece and patted Tawa gently. The charm from Nayeli sat next to it. Together, these items were more than objects. They were reminders of bravery, trust, and the unexpected ways that life could bring people together. Elias lay down to sleep with a sense of gratitude and anticipation. He did not know what challenges or surprises awaited him, but he was ready to face them, carrying with him the lessons of courage, respect, and connection that had begun at the river. The days after Chief Taki's visit were filled with a mixture of excitement and unease for Elias. The river rescue and the gift of Tawa had made him feel proud, but also responsible in a way he had never felt before. Every ride on the plains reminded him of the trust the chief had placed in him. Every glance at the medallion and Nayeli's charm reminded him that courage alone was not enough. Respect, understanding, and careful choices mattered just as much. Elias began to realize that life could challenge a man in unexpected ways, and he was about to face one of the greatest challenges of his life. It began on a hot afternoon, the kind when the sun beat down on the plains relentlessly, turning dust into golden haze. Elias was tending a small herd of cattle near the river when he noticed something unusual. The water, usually steady and calm at this time of year, had begun to rise quickly. Clouds gathered on the horizon, dark and heavy. Storms came fast in these parts, but this one seemed closer, stronger. Elias felt a shiver run down his spine. The river that had nearly claimed Nayeli's life before was swelling again, and this time the danger felt personal. Suddenly a shout rang out from the other side of the river. Elias squinted and saw Nayeli standing on the riverbank, waving her arms frantically. Her face was pale, and she pointed toward the trees upstream. Elias could see now that a group of travelers, strangers to him, had become trapped on a sandbar in the middle of the rapidly rising river. They were struggling to stay upright against the current. Panic surged in Elias's chest. He knew that rushing in blindly could put both himself and others at risk, but he could not ignore the danger. Elias jumped onto Tawa, feeling the horse respond immediately to his command. Tawa's hooves kicked up dust as they raced toward the river. The wind whipped against Elias's face, and the roar of the water grew louder with every step. Nayeli had crossed part of the river on foot, but now she seemed frozen with fear. Elias yelled to her, "Stay calm! I'll get them out." She nodded quickly, understanding that he had to act fast. When they reached the riverbank, Elias could see the travelers more clearly. A family of 4 clinging to each other as the current threatened to pull them under. The father was shouting instructions, but the water was too strong. Tawa stepped carefully into the shallow edge, testing the footing, and Elias gripped the saddle tightly. He knew that timing was everything. One wrong move, and both he and the family could be swept away. Elias took a deep breath, focusing on the rhythm of the river and the strength of the horse beneath him. He guided Tawa into the water carefully, letting the animal's training and instinct guide them. The current tugged at their legs, but Tawa pressed forward, steady and sure. Elias reached the family one by one, helping them onto the horse when it was safe, holding them steady as Tawa moved through the water. The fear in their eyes mirrored what Elias had seen in Nayeli days before, and he felt a surge of determination. He would not fail them. Halfway across the river, a wave of water slammed against them. Elias lost his balance briefly, and the youngest child screamed. Tawa steadied itself instantly, and Elias grabbed the child's small arm, pulling him close. Nayeli, who had waded partway into the river, helped guide the remaining family members to safety on the far bank. Together they worked in perfect coordination, driven by necessity and courage. It was a dangerous dance, but one they had to master to survive. By the time they reached the opposite shore, Elias and Nayeli were soaked, their clothes clinging to them, hair plastered to their faces. The family hugged each other, shivering and exhausted, and then turned to Elias and Nayeli with tears of gratitude. The father's voice trembled as he spoke. "You saved our lives. We would be gone if not for you." Elias nodded, exhausted, but his heart felt full. The relief of seeing everyone safe outweighed the fear and tension that had gripped him during the crossing. But even in that moment of relief, Elias sensed something deeper. The river had shown him how quickly danger could arise and how fragile life was. The gift of courage and trust could only take a man so far. The rest depended on careful thinking, quick action, and respect for nature. Elias realized that every act of bravery carried responsibility, and that mistakes could have consequences far beyond what one might imagine. That evening, as Elias and Nayeli tended to the travelers and ensured they were safe, they sat by a small fire. The sky was dark, but the stars began to appear, twinkling like tiny lanterns. Nayeli spoke quietly, almost to herself. "The river tests us," she said. "It shows us who we are and who we must become." Elias listened, understanding exactly what she meant. He had learned that day that courage without control could be dangerous, and that true bravery often meant making decisions under pressure, while protecting those who could not protect themselves. As they spoke, Elias noticed how much he had come to rely on Nayeli's calm presence. She was not just strong in body, but strong in mind and spirit. Her guidance, even without words, had been crucial in saving the family. Elias felt a sense of humility. He realized that heroism was rarely a solo effort. It was a collaboration of trust, skill, and timing. Each person's role mattered, and respecting that made the difference between life and death. The travelers eventually made their way to a nearby village, where they would be safe for the night. Elias and Nayeli watched them leave, feeling a quiet satisfaction mixed with lingering adrenaline. The river continued to rush, indifferent to human struggles, reminding them that life on the plains was unpredictable and sometimes cruel. Elias knew he could not control everything, but he could choose how to respond. And he had learned that day that action taken with care and respect could make all the difference. As the sun set, Elias returned to his homestead on Tawa, feeling a mix of exhaustion and reflection. The horse moved steadily, its calm demeanor a reminder of the trust and training that made such moments possible. Elias thought of the gifts he had received from Chief Take, the medallion, the saddle, and Tawa herself, and realized that they symbolized more than honor. They represented preparation, responsibility, and the bond between people who acted with courage and respect. That night, Elias sat outside, looking at the stars and thinking about the river, Nayeli, and her family. The river had tested him twice now, once with Nayeli's life, and again with the strangers he had saved. Each challenge had pushed him to act, think, and trust both himself and others. He understood that the hardest moments were not just about fear, but about making choices under pressure and staying true to values like courage, kindness, and respect. Elias held the medallion in his hand, feeling its weight, and glanced at Nayeli's charm beside it. He realized that these objects were more than symbols. They were reminders of lessons learned and lives touched. The river, the people, and the gifts had combined to shape him into someone stronger, wiser, and more aware of the responsibilities that came with bravery. He knew that life would continue to test him in unexpected ways. More storms would come, both literal and metaphorical. More challenges would arise, and sometimes he would be forced to make split-second decisions. But Elias felt ready. He had faced fear, acted with care, and seen the results of courage combined with wisdom. He had also formed connections with people and cultures that expanded his understanding of the world. As he finally lay down to rest, Elias thought of Chief Take, Nayeli, and the travelers he had saved. He realized that the river had given him more than danger. It had given him knowledge, humility, and a deep respect for the lives and cultures around him. And he knew that the next chapter of his life, whatever it might hold, would be guided by the lessons he had learned in those moments of fear, courage, and human connection. In the quiet night, with Tawa resting nearby, Elias understood something profound. The hardest moments often revealed the greatest truths. They tested not just strength, but character. And when faced with such challenges, the choices one made could ripple through lives in ways one might never fully see. The river, powerful and unpredictable, had become both a teacher and a mirror, showing him who he truly was and who he could become. The days after the river rescue passed in a quiet rhythm. Elias had returned to his life on the plains, tending his small herd and caring for Tawa. The horse had become more than a gift. It was a companion, a friend, and a symbol of the trust Chief Taka had placed in him. Every morning as he saddled Tawa, Elias felt a sense of purpose and responsibility. He was no longer just a cowboy riding the open plains. He was a man connected to others through courage, respect, and loyalty. Yet even with the routine of work, Elias could not forget Nayeli and her family. He often found himself thinking about her tall, strong figure standing against the river, her calm presence in moments of danger, and the quiet wisdom in her eyes. He realized that meeting her had changed him in ways he could not fully explain. He had learned that bravery was not only about acting in danger, but also about understanding, respecting, and helping others when it mattered most. One afternoon, as Elias rode near the river, he noticed movement along the far bank. At first he thought it might be wildlife, but as he rode closer he recognized the familiar figure of Nayeli. She waved, smiling warmly, and Elias felt a rush of relief and happiness. She had come to visit, not out of necessity, but out of friendship. That simple gesture reminded him of the connection that had formed between them, a bond built on trust, respect, and shared experiences. Nayeli greeted him in tawa, and together they walked along the riverbank. The water was calm today, flowing gently over smooth stones, but Elias remembered the dangers it had posed. He felt grateful for the lessons it had taught him, and for the way it had brought people together. As they walked, Nayeli spoke about her family, her village, and the lessons she had learned growing up. Elias listened carefully, feeling honored that she trusted him enough to share her thoughts and stories. Days turned into weeks, and Elias and Nayeli spent more time together. They rode along the plains, explored hidden paths, and learned from each other. Elias shared stories of life as a cowboy, while Nayeli taught him about her people, their traditions, and the deep respect they held for the land and its creatures. Every moment was a lesson, every conversation a bridge between worlds. Elias realized that his life had grown richer in ways he had never imagined, filled with meaning, connection, and understanding. Then, one morning, Chief Take himself returned. Elias felt a mix of anticipation and respect as he saw the chief approach. Take dismounted, his presence commanding yet calm, and Elias greeted him with a deep bow of respect. The chief smiled slightly. "You have done well, Elias," he said, "not only in the river, but in the days since. You have cared for Tawa, respected our ways, and shown patience and understanding. These are qualities that matter more than any gold or silver." Elias nodded, feeling both humility and pride. "I only try to do what is right," he said quietly. "I cannot take credit for things beyond my control." Taka placed a hand on Elias's shoulder, his eyes warm. "True courage is measured not only in action, but in character," he said. "You have proven yourself, and I wish to honor that." He handed Elias a small package wrapped in soft leather. Elias opened it carefully and found a hand-carved bow and quiver of arrows. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the wood smooth and strong, the fletching perfect. Elias recognized the gift as a symbol of trust and respect, a way to carry the strength of Nayeli's people with him wherever he went. Elias accepted the gift with gratitude, understanding the deeper meaning behind it. The bow and arrows were more than tools. They were symbols of responsibility, protection, and connection. They reminded him of the river, of Nayeli, and of the courage it had taken to act with both bravery and wisdom. He realized that gifts given with respect carried lessons that lasted a lifetime. That afternoon, Elias and Nayeli rode together, testing the bow and exploring new paths along the river. They laughed, shared stories, and enjoyed the beauty of the plains. The connection between them grew stronger, rooted in shared experience and mutual respect. Elias felt a sense of peace he had never known before. He had faced danger, acted with courage, and earned the trust of remarkable people, and now he could carry those lessons forward in everything he did. As the sun set over the horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Elias reflected on the journey that had begun months earlier with a simple ride along the river. That morning had led to a rescue, a gift, and a friendship that would last a lifetime. He understood that true heroism was not about fame or recognition, but about acting with integrity, caring for others, and learning from every experience. The river, once a symbol of danger, had become a teacher. Nayeli, once a stranger, had become a guide and a friend. Chief Take's gifts and trust had shown Elias the value of courage combined with respect and wisdom. Each part of the story, the rescue, the challenges, the gifts, and the lessons, had shaped him into a man capable of understanding and appreciating the deeper truths of life. Elias knew that life on the plains would continue to present challenges, storms, and moments of danger, but he also knew that he was better prepared, wiser, and more capable than he had been before. Courage, respect, and understanding were not just words. They were actions that could change lives, build connections, and leave lasting legacies. In the weeks that followed, Elias continued to ride the plains, always remembering the river and the lessons it had taught him. Tawa became a loyal companion, carrying him safely across rough terrain and swift waters. Nayeli remained a constant presence, sharing her wisdom, her courage, and her laughter. And Chief Taki's trust and gifts reminded Elias that bravery was never just about physical strength. It was about heart, character, and the willingness to act with integrity. One evening, as Elias sat outside his homestead, gazing at the stars, he thought about the chain of events that had begun with a single moment of action. One day by the river had led to a rescue, the earning of trust, the formation of lasting friendships, and a deeper understanding of life itself. He realized that moments of courage and kindness could ripple far beyond what anyone could imagine, touching lives in ways that lasted long after the danger had passed. Elias reached for the medallion Take had given him and Nayeli's charm, holding them close. He felt a sense of gratitude and humility, understanding that life had given him gifts far greater than wealth or recognition. He had received trust, respect, and connection, things that could not be measured but were worth more than anything else in the world. As the night deepened, Elias reflected on what he had learned. True courage was about action guided by wisdom. True respect was about understanding and honoring others, even when their world was different from your own. True connection was built through trust, kindness, and shared experience. These lessons, he knew, would guide him for the rest of his life, shaping every choice he made and every action he took. The plains were quiet, the stars twinkling above, and Tawa stood nearby, calm and strong. Elias smiled, feeling a sense of fulfillment he had never known before. He knew that the story of the river, Nayeli, Chief Take, and the gifts they had given him was a story that would stay with him forever. It was a story of bravery, respect, and friendship, a story that had begun with a single act of courage and had grown into a life-changing journey. Elias finally lay down to rest that night, feeling a calm peace he had never felt before. The river, once a place of danger, had taught him lessons he would carry forever. Nayeli, once a stranger, had become a trusted friend and guide. And Chief Taki's trust had shown him the value of courage combined with wisdom and respect. Elias knew that life would continue to challenge him, but he was ready. He had learned the most important lesson of all, that the choices we make, the courage we show, and the respect we offer can change not only our lives, but the lives of others as well. In the quiet of the desert night, with Tawa by his side, Elias felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had been given a rare gift, the chance to witness courage, friendship, and trust in their purest forms. And he knew without a doubt that the story of the river and the people he had met would guide him for the rest of his life, a reminder that even the smallest acts of bravery could leave a lasting impact on the world.